Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tunnel Vision, a show brought to you by USCFootball.com. I am your host, Keely Eure, joined alongside Ryan Abraham. And once again, for the third week in a row, we have an empty seat for Shotgun. He will be here, though. He's on his way straight from Arizona, so he'll be coming in hot. But we're going to be talking about USC's 24-20 victory over the Arizona Wildcats.
Victory.
Yeah, it was a win. Surprisingly. It was a win. So we'll be getting into that. I know we have a lot of thoughts about it. I know you guys have a lot of thoughts about it. Be sure to ask us your questions, and we will answer them. I believe we are Trimulcast right now.
Yeah, it looks like we're on. I got you on Periscope, which is good.
Yeah, looks like YouTube's up.
YouTube, Facebook, we're everywhere.
Yes, so we are up on all three, so make sure you get your questions, and we will answer them for sure. Shotgun and I went to the game. Obviously, that's why Shotgun's not here. But Ryan did not. So I think we have a little bit of different perspectives. I think it's different.
I stayed home, yeah.
Yeah, it's different when you watch it on the broadcast versus kind of when you see it live. But we'll be getting into that. We'll be also talking about Clay Helton's press conference call he had.
Took a lot of notes.
Ryan took a lot of notes. That happened at 6 p.m., so we had the latest on that. We'll be talking about
an hour ago, yes.
Bye week. USC will have only 2 practices in the next 8 days.
That seems reasonable, right?
So that will be interesting. We'll get into that for sure. And, of course, answer your questions. Ryan, let's start off with you since you're the only one here.
Yes.
Your takeaways from this game, how do you feel about this?
Wow, yeah. So we'll have Shotgun coming in hot here in a few minutes. But it was a different perspective. I got to sit in my lazy boy easy chair while Keely and Shotgun and Dan and Chris were out there in Tucson working it. I had my, watching. I have to watch all the Pac-12 games, so I got my, tablet on the shelf over here and my laptop in my lap and then the USC game on the TV. So I was watching all the football.
Your battle station?
Yes, it was great. I need to have some sort of setup, but I'm not home a lot to watch games, so it's kind of rare. It's actually kind of nice when you get to watch the other things going on. But it was really weird, monitoring the peristyle, the USCFootball.com message board and Twitter. There wasn't a lot of positivity coming from that one. Even when USC was up 24-0, it just didn't feel like, because Arizona looked so bad. And I watched them, and I thought coming into the season they would be pretty good. And they weren't. Like, they started the season off terrible. But BYU and Houston looked like pretty good teams. Now, BYU just got thumped and played awful at Washington. But it seemed like they were going to be pretty good. They scored like 62 against Southern Utah or whatever. And then on the road against, in Corvallis, which isn't an easy place to go, I thought they looked really good. And they turned things around a little bit. They got their left tackle back. I think we talked about that, Lake Freak. And it's helped them get the running game going. They ran for 422 yards or whatever against the Beavers. But no, you saw Arizona State run all over the Beavers this past weekend too. I kind of thought they would be better. They looked awful. They were home. They looked like a hapless team. They couldn't do anything. It was a one-legged Khalil Tate, and it didn't seem like this was a team that knew what it was doing. And USC, just by showing up, was going to beat this team. That's clearly what the thing was. So even what I felt, I don't know if you guys felt this way, 24-0, it didn't feel great. But then it got worse, and USC kind of started making more mistakes. I mean, there were penalties throughout the game. I kept keeping track. People kept asking me, how many penalties is that now? So I had the stats up, and I would keep tweeting and letting people know. But crazy to see that, keep going and going. And then 2 penalties on the same play over and over, multiple turnovers. But then when USC stopped scoring and turning the ball over and Arizona got things going, there's really so many opportunities you can give Khalil Tate. Now, he wasn't going to beat you with his legs, but he could still throw the football. And even though they weren't in sync, nothing really was working for them. They were still able to come back. And within, I was one stupid missed extra point away from getting the spread right. Exactly. Again, I said a 3-point spread, and it would end up being a 4-point spread. But USC covered that game because Arizona just missed an extra point. Nothing else to do with that. So, which was crazy. So it's the first cover USC had this year. But overall, Keely, it just seemed like it was not a great feeling up 24-0. And obviously it got a lot worse when Arizona rattled off 20 straight points.
Yeah, it's interesting. It felt a little different in the stadium. I feel like it looked like going into the half 17-0, it was over. Even though that's not a big margin, it seemed like it was over based on how
it did feel like it was over for
dead
sure.
Everything was. But the interesting thing was pregame, I was talking to a reporter for our sister site for the Arizona 247 site, and he was like, if USC's going to blow out Arizona by the half. He was like, look at the physical differences. Like, there's no way that USC won't do this. And I was like, clearly you have not watched USC enough because they will find a way. And so he like DM'd me like, oh, I told you. And then the fourth quarter, I was like, what do you know? USC finds a way. And it was a little anecdote that kind of shows USC could have gone in there, left with a decisive victory, had a first Pac-12 South win. They still have it. I told Ryan before we even started that I keep having to remind myself that it's a win.
They won.
I think that's a big tell there. But the fact that USC couldn't just handle their business and get out of there clean with a clean game where they felt good about winning is just... It's rough. Like that's not what you want from a team at all.
You know what's neat though? Like you mentioned that, and you look at the USC players on the field, like, well, look at all these 5-star guys. They're athletic. So people that aren't around all the time. We've had a few new people come to the beat this past year. So like a Brady McCullough from the LA Times. He's looking around like, this team's going to be really good. Like he really felt like, why wouldn't this team be great? And you're like, hold my beer.
Sweet summer child.
You're new here. Just wait a second.
Yeah, for real. So that's how it happened yesterday pregame, and it was just it was not good. As far as Clay Helton's press conference, conference call, let's get into it. What were the notable bits and pieces from?
I got my notes here, so let me put my reading glasses on. I'm not that old yet. Shout out to our boy Bruce Feldman. I was just coming from his house. He's turning a big number.
5-0.
Big 5. Keely's gonna say 5.
Oh, sorry. My bad.
We love Bruce, so he just came from his house. But I came right from here. I just got in right into the office right when the conference call started, so got in just in time. The first line out of his mouth was "Control your own destiny" in the Pac-12 South. So he didn't sound like he loved the win, but it was an important win because you do control your own destiny. And they talked about they have to pack. I think they said pack 4 things to win on the road, to travel, like analogy or whatever it was. Stopping the run, which they did a really good job. Arizona was running the ball really great, like I said. And, they did a good job slowing that down. I think they had 98 yards rushing or something. Running the ball themselves. I mean, Cedric Ware went off. You saw him. He's my boy. He was my pick for a breakout player. Had a 100-yard game in the first game and then, blew that away. In this game against Arizona, I thought that was a big deal. So they ran the ball pretty well. And also on special teams, he praised Michael Brown for hitting another field goal. So, and then they blocked another field goal too. So interesting. Like the last 2 weeks, USC and Washington State and USC and Arizona, they scored the same amount of times. It was just conversions. Missing a PAT, getting a field goal block. That's been the difference in the game, which these little special teams play. So, I mean, and those weren't happening in the other 2 games. But so he kind of talked about those. But the fourth thing you got to pack to win on the road is fix the mistakes and clean that stuff up. And he said they definitely did not do that. And one of the things he said multiple times is talking about it's on him, things he's got to fix with this team, and he's going to do it immediately. So he mentioned that 3 or 4 times. And I've never, I think a random Troy Friends tweeted something like it felt a little bit more like a sense of urgency there. Now, I didn't feel like they were going to do a whole lot different, like to fix the penalties. He was asked, he's going into the Monday meeting tomorrow, and they're going to fix it. So it wasn't like, hey, we're going to do extra this after practice or anything. It was like they were going to go into the meeting, and that was, that's what he's saying. But at least the talk was they're going to fix some of these things immediately. As far as injuries go, so Chuma Edoga has a hip that's kind of been bothering him all year. I think he got replaced in the fourth quarter with, was it Elijah Vera-Tucker came in?
No, Jalen McKenzie.
Oh, Jalen McKenzie came in. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Vera-Tucker's doing the guard stuff. Raymond Scott, the reserve linebacker, he had a broken finger. Porter had an ankle,
impingement?
Impingement. So it's kind of on his, I don't know, it's bothering him, and it was too painful, so he couldn't go much longer. And then Houston had a neck injury. Asked about the center position directly, like, hey, would you want to move Toa Lobendon someplace? I know Keely and I talked about maybe having him play guard. He was very, Toa's our center, said that right away. Talked about the weird play, the fumbled snap. He said that wasn't Toa's fault. There was 2 people in motion at the same time, and everyone was trying to stop the play, and they were confused. Clay Helton was trying to call a timeout, and apparently Toa Lobendon heard a signal that he thought was a snap. So Helton didn't blame Lobendon for that at all. He said it was a perfect snap to hit him in the gut. It looked like a bad. If you snap it and the quarterback's not ready, I don't think it's a good snap. But whatever. That's. But so he's not making a change there. So if you're someone that wants Toa Lobendon not to be the center, that's not happening. the real thing, he harped on mistakes a lot, that, the turnovers and the penalties. It felt like that's what, he asked a bit about being like a fourth quarter, being a 4-quarter team. He felt they could have separated from Arizona like they were in the first half without all those mistakes. So it was kind of like, hey, we could do it. We just have to clean up the mistakes. There wasn't like, oh, we're going to do this differently. We're going to be blah, blah, blah. But the weirdest part was, I don't have the exact quote, but he said, this will be a talented team. Like, it's going to be a talented team. He can't wait for people to see this team in November. He believes in where the team is going, and he sees where they're going. And I was like, it's going to be a talented team? It is a talented team. Like, that's the issue. And I think I tweeted this out. It's getting a lot of responses and stuff. But yeah, it's like, this is already a talented team. It's just they don't look like a talented team on there. It's not going to be a talented team in a month. It's going to be the exact same team. No one's coming back. They're not getting any free agents or anything. Yeah. It's already a talented team. So that was the one, Keely, that was really strange. The first line I tweeted when I said control your own destiny, people hated that. They hate to hear that. Because the Pac-12 South is really hot garbage. It's not good. It's the worst division in the Power Five. So you can't hang your hat on that and feel like the fans are going to be like, this is great, we won the Pac-12 South. They're not. And if you read my column this morning, I kind of talk about that too.
The thing about what you pointed out is they will be a talented team. It seems like there's this thought process that we will develop throughout the season. We heard from JT Daniels and the wide receivers like, oh, once we had 4 games down, now we have chemistry. Whereas you could have tried and have more chemistry in fall camp, So I don't understand this whole let's grow and obviously you want to grow and progress over the course of the season, but not where you're trying to make huge changes and fix things that are undisciplined mistakes. Right. That points to practice and coaching more so than talent. So there's a lot of problems we've seen and we've talked about here, and everyone at home that's watching us has written in and said, hey, we've seen those problems. We talked about those problems, and it sounds like maybe Clay Helton doesn't see the problems, and now he's starting to see some of them. And I would even give them a pass on. I don't think using JT Daniels as a freshman is an excuse. Like, you have other quarterbacks. Like, if you needed to use a true freshman, that's on you. And if he's the most talented guy, then it's on you to make it better. And if you didn't name him the starter until a week before the first game, that's also on you. But maybe it takes a few weeks for him to get chemistry with Vaughns and Pittman and stuff. I don't have too much of an issue with that. But what was going on with the offensive line? Like, why were they stinking it up? That's a veteran group. Like, there's a lot of reasons that the people that shouldn't be waiting until November to get good. So that's what I just don't get. What do you take of Helton sounding at least more self-aware in this conference call? I know Helton normally isn't like that. He's more positive to a fault. Do you think that he's feeling the heat and thus is now making at least the verbal change of acknowledging things that need to be fixed?
I think he's feeling the heat for sure. I mean, if you just look at social media, and we feel bad for the people that run like the USC, Jordan Moore and Hola's team. We love those guys.
Yeah.
Every time they put up a video or anything, there's negative comments we get. They get the same kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like they're part of the school. We're covering the school. It's a very different thing. It's a different sort of feeling. I think he's feeling it. I didn't get the feeling, though, this was like this, epiphany where he was going to be like, you know what, we're going to practice in full pads and blah, blah. No, I don't. I just felt like he needed to talk about it a little bit more. We're going to address it. But, and this question wasn't asked directly, and I'm going to put that on us. Like, it's kind of weird the way the conference call works. And I was, Dan already asked some questions, so I didn't want to chime in with 2 people from the same site. But I would have loved to ask, like, hey, are you going to change practice, like, to do more than 2 practices this week? Because if you don't know, they had Sunday, Monday, they have off, at least according to the schedule they sent us, Tuesday, Wednesday, regular practices, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, no practices. So there's 2 practices over 8 days. I know Dan Weber wasn't real happy with it. I don't, and I think that's something that was scheduled just like no pads during the shortened week, the shortened week heading into Washington State. That was scheduled in August. I think this was scheduled in August, and they just have a plan and they stick to it. Where you kind of want, like, if he's talking about fixing this, I would have believed it or felt it was really urgent if he would have said, you know what, we're fixing it right away. The plan was to only practice 2 days and rest people and stuff like that, but we can't do it. We need to get out there and fix things. Then I'd be like, Keely, you're right. Like, I think but to me, it just felt more like he was talking about it and not necessarily doing it. And the one thing I forgot to mention, so he said for the bye week, the goals were to fix mistakes, get some early Colorado prep. It's they're undefeated. It's Pac-12 South opponent, even though their opponents are 1-16. But then this is what tells me they're not going to be, working super hard the 2 practices is get the young people in and get people healthy. So when when you're doing that, that's what. That tells me what I need to know about. Does he change things up and he's going to work turnover drills and all this kind of stuff during the off week? No, he's not going to be doing that. It's going to be more about getting guys healthy and doing all that. So I like that he said, I'm going to fix this immediately, but I didn't feel there was anything different that was going to happen from that. Just, we're going to address it in the meeting.
I feel like Helton feels like he can't address that he needs to change things. I feel like there's this reluctancy where he feels like if he admits, hey, look at shotgun.
Hi, guys.
I feel like if he admits, hey, we need to change this, we need to fix this, we need to go to full pads 2 days a week or add a Thursday practice.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a reluctancy because then he opens the door to maybe I don't know what I'm doing.
Like criticism or something?
Yeah. I mean, he's already being criticized, but I think there's this wall of protection where he thinks that will somehow save him more, which I feel like if he did the opposite, it would actually help him.
Right. Like if I have a plan, I'm going to stick with the plan, and it's like you're admitting that you're wrong. But that doesn't really make any sense to me because you're a young head coach. Like you're expected to learn on the job. Like they didn't hire you expecting you to know everything now. So if you try something like here's our plan, and everyone goes, you know what, it'd probably be better to practice in pads more after you get pushed around, then you could change the plan and be like, yeah, that makes sense, and kind of go with it. But it does. He's very, very, very reluctant to change any sort of plan that was put in place.
Rather than changing it and it's saying, oh, previously we had a mistake, I think their play is already showing that we had a mistake. There's a lot of things that, obviously the penalty, you guys, I listened on the way in, the stuff you guys
Where's
talked about.
Chris? Is Chris here? Or?
Chris just got picked up. Chris Ravino actually drove most of the way, so thank you very much to him. He's actually feeling a little bit under the weather, so he's getting picked up and immediately going home.
Okay, I thought we might have a special guest coming in.
Yeah, sorry. But
he's kind of shy, but
I basically worked the entire way until I ran out of juice on my battery, so that's why I had to plug up immediately when I came in. So, you look at the things that aren't going right for them, aren't going the way they want them to go. And those are the things you look at and you're like, okay, well, what's the issue? How do we fix it? We got to change something. And you look at how are we getting to these issues? And you say, okay, well, the practices, if you're not tackling well, you got to tackle more. If you're not being physical in the trenches, you need be more physical in practice. If you're having way too many penalties, there needs to be repercussions for the penalties.
Yeah. Repercussions, yes.
So you look at those things and you say, okay, well, the product we're putting out there is not what we want. So we have to change something and say that what we were doing before was not working. So your play is already telling you that your previous plan isn't working.
Yeah.
So why not change the stuff in practice and go?
Yeah.
I mean, you go full
I think
pad,
the issue is there are things that have worked, obviously. I mean, because there are results that he can point to that, hey, we won the Rose Bowl, we won the Pac-12, and you ignore all the other issues that all the fans see. And I think Keely and I were talking about this before. If you were like critical, it was kind of a split fan base, I think, coming into the season.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to find a positive response to anything. Like if you're like, it's not there. Like even the diehard fans of the Clay Helton, team are they're not really on the same page anymore. So he had those results that you could always point to, like, I don't need to change because we still did this, even though there was obviously things you could fix. But now it's like, and the way they're going, like they're going to lose more games, even though the Pac-12 South is awful. But I think that's what it is. We still have these results, so that's why we're not going to change. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's part of it, but you look, I mean,
I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying I think that's what he's thinking.
There's always going to be the fan base being upset. You look at the James Franklin clip from the other night. At 45, what are you doing, coach? Come on, what are you doing? And Franklin gets mad and tries to go at the guy. That was just a very interesting choice on his part. But so there's always going to be someone upset at every game. Just go ahead and assume that. But when everyone is upset, I think that kind of tells you something.
Right.
Yeah.
That everyone is kind of turned, and because there are so many people that like Clay Helton and want him to succeed, from anyone who's met him wants him to succeed.
Yeah.
Because
he's like the nicest guy in the world.
Yeah. So he's a guy that is a likable guy that you hope he does well. But when you're not seeing the results that you want, don't you have to do something about it?
Yeah, and I didn't see the James Franklin post game, but he criticized, like as anybody, that's a huge game. If people felt he choked at the end. But when in the press conference, from what I was told, and we had a question on the Peristyle podcast, he was like, he was like, we are not where we need to be. I need to do, it was really kind of taking accountability for what was going on. So I think if Clay Helton did that too, it wouldn't be, wouldn't go in there and say, hey, we fought really hard. You fought really hard against, Ohio State, but that's not what he was focused on. He was focused on what they did wrong. And I think that's what people kind of want to see.
And I think that's much more common of coaches to say we didn't do well.
Yeah.
It's not very often. How many really successful coaches are like, well, we did really well at this. Nick Saban goes in and is like, you guys need to write bad things about and tell that every little bad thing they do. Like, Coach, you just won by 172 points. What do you want us to write?
He wins the championship and is pissed.
You had one false start in the season. You think this bad? Now he's on a different level than anybody.
Right.
But the most successful coaches are usually not happy with their performances. They can always find something to be upset about. You should be happy about wins, but then I think that you should be happy after games when you win. Then on the Sunday conference call, that's when you'd be like, "This is what we got to fix." This. I looked at the tape. All of a sudden, it's much different after I've looked at everything.
Yeah.
We should probably get into questions.
Sure,
thank you to everyone who is labeling question. We're getting a lot of comments, which was good, but it helps me out when you label question. We have a question from Corey who says, do you believe Clay Helton and the other coaches have any self-realization of the fact that their coaching tactics, game scheme, and play calling is not adequate to maximize the talent that this team has?
I think for the individual coaches, everyone has their own kind of job. So especially when there's problems in the big picture, you're kind of focused on what you got to do. So if you're coaching the linebackers, that's kind of what you're focused on, and there's you're doing what you can do. So I don't know if it's I don't think those guys are seeing big picture problems as much as you would think. They're like, hey, you got to put your nose down and coach your guys and do what you got to do. I think that the problem is at the top. Clay Helton's running the show, and like Shotgun was saying, if there's a problem, there should be if people are screwing up, there should be a repercussion. Now these are college kids. I'm not saying, but if it's playing time, that's what you take out, right? If someone screws up, then you take them out and put somebody else in, and that's at least lights a fire under them or a little something. So yeah, I think it's more of a problem at the very top. I think when you do have problems like this throughout the whole thing, John Baxter's going to focus on his kicking game, and if he's getting criticized, it's he's got to fix it. If he's not, he's still focusing on his focus on the kicking game.
And give credit to John Baxter for bouncing back the special teams the last couple of weeks. I mean, they did have a partially blocked punt last week, but 2 blocks the last 2 weeks, which obviously turned out to be really crucial when you win by 4 points there. But I think that some of the coaches look at it and say, well, I thought it was a really good play call, and if this guy would have done this and this guy would have done that, and it would have worked out. And sometimes you got to realize that this guy's not good at doing that. This guy, that's not his strength.
Right.
And though, if I had whatever it may be, if I had the Kurt Warner Rams wide receivers, the greatest show on turf, if I had that offense and had those exact guys, then this play would have been great. Well, you don't have those guys.
Right.
So you have to, what calls are you going to make to fit your group? How much are you going to sub? How much are you going to be able to rotate your guys to have each of them excel and to have your unit excel? And I feel like sometimes that gets lost on this coaching staff. Is they're like, well, I had something really good there.
Yeah.
If I would have had,
this should work. It's well,
if Sam Darnold was still the quarterback, he ran around in 4, figure eights, then yeah, this would work. Well, that's not the case anymore. And I'm just using that because Sam Darnold is obviously the highest draft pick. But the same thing is if you had Leonard Williams there to do that, and he can handle a double team, and that frees up someone else, and he still might make those type things. If you don't have that guy, then you can't. That's not what you can do. Yeah. You have to change your philosophy. You have to fit your personnel with your coaching. So I think sometimes that gets lost. And not all the coaches, but I think sometimes that is something that gets overlooked. And it's tough as a coach because if you're looking at it, you're like, okay, I know how to fix this one thing. I know this would work really well against this defense. But then you have to figure out, all right, is it going to work well with the guys I currently have versus the guys I had last year, the guys I had the year before? And sometimes I feel like that gets lost a little bit.
We have a question from Tim on YouTube, who's asked multiple times, so I'm getting to you, Tim. He said, did Shotgun or Keely have a good look at the PI call on Biggie? What happened on the timeout fumble and Helton's sideline interference?
So I tried to rewatch some of the game on the way back. Thanks to Chris Trevino again for driving. I was able to watch some of it. The PI, even when I was watching it in real time, I never saw him touch the guy. And now, granted, I panned basically right when he threw the ball, so I had pictures of him catching the ball, but I didn't see any contact before. Rewatching it, there's a little bit of contact.
Looks like legs kind of
really
got tangled up.
Like
or something.
that's a PI.
Yeah.
Like that's a no call, or I mean, it's just a no call. I mean, it's a very tough.
They didn't
PI
have a great look
if
on,
it was.
on the TVs. Yeah.
There was not a lot of great looks on much anything. It was not a very good broadcast from what I saw. I'm not sure what the timeout fumble. I'm not sure about that one.
Ryan actually talked about it earlier. The
Yeah.
Toa.
So I don't know
okay.
if he wasn't getting the timeout called, but he said the Toa heard a signal and snapped it. He wasn't blaming Toa for that.
There was a lot of miscommunication. I mean,
people were in motion. That
not just that play though. I mean, Toa had 2 false snaps basically, where he thought he was going to snap, and then he realized that no, they weren't ready. Like one of them was the same thing where JT was looking elsewhere, and Toa I think caught himself where he heard something or whatever, and he started to snap, and he's like, oh, well, if I snap it now, it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
There was also several low snaps. I mean, that's something I'm going to be looking at in film study.
Oh, Clay Helton said he was going to fix that this week.
Wasn't that? I asked about this in training camp, I believe.
So he was so if you weren't here, he was asked if Toa's the center and stuff. But the one thing he said was he mentioned this because that snap was brought up specifically the fumble, and he said there was 2 people in motion, and all that. So he explained that. But then he said, and there were some low snaps that we'll fix this week. So he's like Toa's the guy, and whatever.
Maybe it wasn't me, but it was asked in training camp when Toa had a couple bad days of snapping, and he said we'll get it fixed.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, it was for a couple.
Wait,
of games.
is it now?
Also, why did it suddenly return? Like, it was good for a while. What about the Wazoo game did it start reemerging?
I'm not sure. And the other question was about we couldn't tell on the broadcast either which coach got hit.
I think it was Nansen.
Okay.
I saw the ref because Helton was really mad about it and didn't understand why, and the ref pointed to Nansen. And Nansen is all over the sideline. I don't think it was intentional. It was just something that happened, but I didn't actually see it occur. But I saw the ref point.
Did you guys? I'm going to ask you guys real quick. So I was Friday. I'm not traveling. You guys are traveling. It's like lunchtime. I did whatever I was doing the podcast, and I came back. And I'm walking down my street to go get sushi. There's a little sushi place like a block from my house. And I get a call from ESPN 710, and they're like, hey, can you come on Mason and Ireland right now? I'm like, okay. So I just right in the middle of the street. I do their show, and they're like, okay, Ryan, Keyshawn Johnson has been saying that Clay Helton is actually calling the plays. And I was like, who's calling? He's like, who's calling plays? Like, well, I asked Clay Helton about that specifically heading into training camp, and he said T. Martin's going to be the play caller. Brian Ellis, was up in the booth where Tyson Helton was for the bowl game, but now he's on the field, so there's really no one else out there to do it. And if you look at Clay Helton, it doesn't look like he has a play sheet or anything, so I assume it's mostly T. Martin, but maybe Clay Helton can override some calls if he wants. That was the best answer I got. I don't know what you guys saw down there. Was there any chance that he's actually calling the plays?
Because this came up, I tried to look at and see when I was nearby on the sidelines. I didn't necessarily see that he was calling plays. He does have a play sheet, but that's also, I think, probably a situational sheet.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, it's 3rd and 7, how many plays we have, that type of thing.
If a guy's calling plays, you're usually seeing this kind of stuff. And all
that. Now, Clay talks on the headset during, in things, but I think that's also feedback back and forth, like, hey, we need to run the ball here, or whatever it may be. I don't know that he's necessarily calling the plays.
Yeah.
I haven't got that feel, that vibe. I think you would see, actually, if you look on the sideline, I think you would see people looking at him. Because you want to get the play call or you want to see what the play call is. So if I'm the backup quarterback, whatever, I'm going to turn and say, okay, let's see what he's saying. I don't think you saw that in the game. Now, maybe that's something, if you look back on it.
If he's doing it, it's like on the sly or something.
Yeah.
It's like he's
I did see Helton give signals more than I'm used to seeing in Arizona. I'm not sure if that's just, I don't know why, but I did. It
could just be that we were observing it more too, because this storyline came up, which it just kind of popped up out of nowhere.
But for someone like Keyshawn to go on the radio and then say that, then cause the people, the people are talking about our message board. They call me to talk about that's the kind of stuff that's happening. And I think maybe what Keely, your point earlier, do you think that I feel like there's more pressure out there? There's more criticism. There's more from probably within the family that he's hearing more now, that maybe he was insulated from some of it before. Like if some random guy in the peristyle is complaining about him, he probably doesn't care. But when it's everybody, and then when there's other people around it and former players and stuff like that, then I think I think that gets your attention a little bit more.
He was asked about it a couple Thursdays ago, and he said T. Martin is gracious enough to let Helton chime in during Red Zone. So I think he has input there. At least that's what they're saying. But as far as what we know, what's really happening, we don't know the full story. I don't think.
We just got to get an illegal feed of their broadcast.
Yeah, sure. That's
if you can do it in NASCAR, where you can listen to every radio call.
I would love to be on the headsets. That would be interesting. We have a question from Brandon who says, I'm sorry. He says, what do you feel about the reasoning for the team being undisciplined? What's the reason behind that?
I think it stems from practice. Like, that's where it's just not
culture.
Yeah, the culture is not. If it works, it's fine. But it's more of an NFL culture. Like, these are a bunch of professionals as opposed to a bunch of young guys. And he mentioned today that, like he said, they're like 17 to 21-year-olds, which kind of gives you a little groan. Like, okay, you're a college coach. Like, that's what they're going to be. But that sometimes you got to do it differently. And if you listen to our podcast with Coach Harvey Hyde, I love talking to him. There's some people that hate, I can't stand the coach, and there's other people that absolutely love him. But there's more of this old school approach where it's like he would get to practice and go, "What the heck is going on here?" Like, that's just what people want to see. And sometimes, if you're a kid, sometimes you need discipline from your parents, and you almost feel like the players are asking for something, asking for this kind of discipline, asking for doing something different, like punish us, make us do something wrong, do something different. And I just think that's what they're lacking right now.
Have we seen any punishment besides? They used to do conditioning in spring a little bit. I know the wide receivers do push-ups if they drop a ball, but has there have we seen any real conditioning punishment or anything at practice?
Brandon Peely was suspended for a half for being late to a meeting, apparently. But, every once in a while you'll see someone doing bear
that's like a by-the-book sort of thing. That's not like, this is not right. Like, everyone go run or something. Like this, just a spur of the moment, like, do something different because everyone's in a rut and this has got to stop.
And one of the things that previously Clay Helton didn't allow was when players would get in little skirmishes with each other, the whole team would have to, do up-downs or something.
Yeah.
Now it's, as long as it's just one-on-one skirmish, it's okay. I like seeing that fire. I want to see, and that's actually a good thing, I think, in a, to have that competitive landscape.
Yeah, I don't mind
to have, people going at each other. But it's interesting that it's changed because before, when they would get into it, okay, bring them up. You guys can't do this. We'll get a 15-yard penalty. We're doing up downs right now. Now it's, all right, look, I'll bring it up. All right, we gotta make sure we focus our intensity, but nobody's doing up downs or anything. And maybe you've seen more personal. I don't know. USC's always been really bad at penalties, and also they went from. I put it in my story earlier today, but they entered the week number 83 in the country in penalty yards per game, number 79 for fewest penalties per game. Those all dropped to 119 and 120, they were 123rd now in total penalty yardage. So they had a big drop, obviously, from this game. Some of that you can give to Pac-12 rest because Pac-12 numbers are always much higher than other conferences. But, they were kind of doing okay for them. I mean, they were only averaging like 64 penalty yards a game, which you're like, that's actually not that bad for USC.
Their numbers were kind of high.
Coming into the game, it was like 64 per game.
But yards, but I think the numbers were probably a little bit higher than the yardage.
Numbers of penalty? Okay.
Yeah. But, yeah. We have a lot of people on Periscope. Can I do a Periscope one real quick?
Go for it.
Thanks for all the Periscope love. I'm sorry, it's hard to... Kenny says he needs to be punished. I don't know.
Wirecast is not responding.
Oh, no.
I know.
We're still going on YouTube, at least.
Okay. We have Molly the Pit 1. Question, do you think Helton has lost this team, such as respect and authority? Must have stopped.
Yeah, we're out. Why?
Now it just froze up on YouTube.
I think it's back now.
It's being really
Always
weird.
trying to reconnect. I'm getting some joins.
Oh, there we go. We're back on YouTube.
We're back?
I think we're back. Sorry, I think we got lost for a second there.
I don't know what happened. That's weird.
Keely broke it.
Keely, man, why are you breaking our stuff? Just kidding. And authority.
You look at some of the things that you see on Twitter, you see, players talking after the games, and some of the things that you think maybe need to be said, like Cedric Ware, saying that they practice lazy and then come back and Cedric Ware is not in the lineup anymore. Cedric Ware played 4 snaps against Washington State. It was a sore knee, apparently.
Right.
Now said had a knee issue, earlier in camp. So, he missed a practice or two with, so that does happen. So maybe that is legit. Tyler Vaughn's also said that, there was some, that they got to do better in practice. Well, Tyler Vaughn's didn't start the next game. So
Yeah. That's a good point. I forgot about that one. That's my boy. They're both my boys. You're like screwing my boy.
And now Dominic Davis is basically saying on Twitter, he tweeted today that, Stanford, Oregon, and Washington would be smashing people and not being happy with the fact that they got a win. So
I didn't see that either. He didn't make the trip, right?
He did not. He has not made any trips. He's not played at all. He's not dressed at all. I asked him about it, and he said, I'll be back soon. Did not really give an answer to that. And he did not want to go further into it. But so you see when players have spoken out that there's been some punishment, or could possibly be some punishment if you want to look at it from that angle. And you're seeing that there seems to be a little bit of animosity at not necessarily the coaching staff, but the way they're playing. You had multiple players talk about, Cam Smith said, I'm sick. He said he's sick after that win.
Yeah.
Usually when you win, it's like, we won, I don't care. Don't care how, we got this. That's all that matters. We got that W.
When the players aren't feeling that.
Yeah, and Michael Pittman said the same, similar things. We talked to a couple players, and they just like, it's a win, but
Yeah.
I put that on Twitter like last night, 11:20. I said, okay, give me one word you would describe your feeling after this win. And it took like an hour for someone to say something positive. Like someone said like fight on once or something. But there was so much. I mean, there's so many things, and people made up words and all kinds of. There was check my Twitter feed if you want to see it. It's pretty interesting. There was I think on 400 replies or something to that. But the one that I felt was unsatisfying, and it just felt like it was a win. And I wrote a column today. You can check it on the site, and it was like, hey, if you do a 3-day juice cleanse, this is very LA, analogy. If you're doing a 3-day juice cleanse, and you get to eat afterwards, 'cause I've done this before, and you get to eat afterwards. Like, I want to go eat like a donut, I want to eat something and if you get to eat a rice cake, yes, that's solid food. It's no longer in the juice cleanse, but it's not satisfying. Like, it's technically food, but it's not very satisfying. So, yes, you got the win, but you don't feel really good about it. And that's just kind of what this felt like to me. And I think, there's a lot of interesting words people use, but that was the one I picked.
I don't like your anti-rice cake stance here.
The cinnamon caramel ones are great, but the plain ones are awful.
The plain ones.
But the thing that stood out
Homer
to me...
Simpson said, I put my drinks on those.
Multifunctional. The thing that stood out to me about your column, though, Ryan, is that you said, how many times have you heard a win is a win? And at what point is that not good enough? And I think when we did have those Clay Helton defenders, especially last season... Yeah, USC got wins, but some of them they escaped and it didn't look good. They weren't blowouts when they could have been. And so
should have been.
Yeah, and they should have been. So it's that point of when is Helton and the team going to make a stride where they're playing to the best of their ability? And we haven't been seeing that.
So publicly, a win is a win is exactly true. When you come out of a game, you win, whatever. Publicly, that's it. When you get back in that locker room, coaches should be going, this is not acceptable. So when we go to high school games, I can't remember which game I went to early in the season. I think it was Orange Lutheran. They had a win. They beat San Juan Hills. Their coach after the game is like, you guys won. Congratulations. It's not acceptable. This performance was not acceptable. We play like this against whatever other team in the Trinity League or whatever, and you say that's not going to happen. They came back the next week. They played really well. That should be, there should be a public and a private, persona on it. A win is a win because winning is difficult.
Yes.
At any level, winning is difficult. So you get the win. You should be satisfied with the win, but you shouldn't necessarily be satisfied with the performance.
Right.
And I think that's what should be a problem with USC. And the question is that what we're getting? Because I'll bring it up here in a second, but when Cameron Smith was talking, he said, the thing I love about Clay Helton is he's always positive. But Clay Helton, in the locker room after the post-game speech, talked about, they got the win. But he came to Cam Smith after his post-game speech and said, we got to get better. We got to get better in a hurry. And one of the things that Cam said, and he talked back and forth, and they had a good discussion, it sounded like, from this conversation, or they had a good conversation, it sounded like, from his interview, is that they have to have a sense of urgency, and it doesn't seem like there is that sense of urgency yet. So I think that's something that Cam and some of the other players are trying to push, is that we have to be much more urgent and use this week. And again, if there's 2 practices, they better be the toughest practices anybody on the field's ever had. Because if you're going to take all those days
What do
off,
you think is going to happen?
I don't think that's
They're
going to
rest they're going to rest starters, and they're going to play young people, and it's going to be a week of no practice, basically.
But as far as the sense of urgency
Sorry.
goes,
I know. I mean, that's what we've seen.
I mean, that's what you believe. Like
It should be what it should be. Where's what it is.
if it's the return of mock game week, I think that would be acceptable. But as far as sense of urgency in the culture, how much of that is Clay Helton putting a positive spin on everything? If you know that Clay Helton's going to make it, it's going to be okay, there's going to be a positive spin, do you really feel like, oh, we got to get this together? Is it a little too laid back, a little too casual?
Because there's not really we can cruise to win. Because you look at that game, and you guys saw that, especially in the first half, it just looked like they were two different. They played in 2 different leagues. Like there was what is this team doing? Like if Khalil Tate was healthy, maybe he's this threat that can brighten everyone else up. But he just wasn't that. You just could tell he's not going to be able to do what he normally does. And USC could basically cruise to win. So that's kind of where the issue is, where they know if you're playing, you're playing pickup basketball, and it's like me and shotgun against 2 5'6" dudes that aren't athletic. Are we probably not gonna try all that hard, and unless there's someone coaching us and pushing us through. But sometimes those guys are better than you, and they do some good things, and wait, we might screw around a little bit, and then we're losing all of a sudden. Then you kind of have to step it up and put it into gear. I think that's what the coaches have to be there for. They're not good enough. I mean, they're better than a lot of people they play, but they're not good enough to just cruise and win games. They cruised in this one and almost lost.
I mean, if the Cleveland Browns are playing a college team, any college team, even Alabama, they could do that.
Right.
Because you have all the all-stars from every college team on an NFL team, even in a really bad one like the Cleveland Browns.
They're pretty good now, though, even though they lost today. They're better. They're
2
better.
wins, now all of a sudden you're on the bandwagon? Okay.
No, I think they one win. They lost.
Okay.
They're
One
two and
win,
four.
one tie. So USC is not going to be that. Now, they are, so Cleveland, NFL team, any NFL team, college. USC's talent versus the Pac-12, there is a discrepancy there against pretty much everybody. Maybe Washington or Oregon in certain years have equivalent talent. But every year they're getting better talent than other teams. But you can't just cruise on that. That gap is not big enough. Now, maybe it was in the past.
Yeah.
Some of those Pac-10 years, even with Pete Carroll, they could cruise on some of those games. I mean, some of the Arizona teams were straight boo-boo. But that's not the case right now because of the revenue sharing and everything else, and all those teams that were able with the big TV deal when it first got it, and the Pac-12 deal was really big at the time. Those schools went and invested in their programs, new weight rooms, new whatever their media center or whatever it is for the players to attract more players. Whereas before it was even though USC didn't have the greatest facilities, you're still LA is so much better than Pullman, just straight off as a natural place. Not now. Some people still love Pullman. That's
I like Pullman. The Coug is a great bar.
But the overall attractiveness of the city to a general population, which is an 18-year-old, is part of the general population.
Yeah.
So there was a big discrepancy. Now it's slim some, and I think that you're kind of resting on your laurels if you just think you can just roll out and beat whoever is going to be in front of you.
And real quick, I hate discounting wins. I mean, you don't want to do that. That's why, just the feeling from the fans from last night were just wow. I mean, it really was. It's hard to find that many fans disappointed in a win. That's the point where it's gotten. You don't normally want to be that way. And I wrote in the piece, it's you look at the rest of the games. I mean, if you beat Arizona State the same way, no one's going to feel good. You beat even Colorado is undefeated. Their opponents are 1-16. Colorado hasn't played anybody, and those aren't going to feel good. The only game that you could feel good winning by a point on a crappy play at the end of the game would be Notre Dame. Everyone else, beating UCLA is great, but they might have 1 or 2 wins maybe by the time they play USC. So it's kind of there's not a lot of opportunities to get feel-good wins unless you blow teams out, and we just haven't seen their ability to do that.
And in 2020, if USC plays exactly how they did yesterday and comes away with a win against Alabama, I think people would be happy.
They would, but there's no way that would happen unless Nick Saban, something terrible happened. Don't want to wish anything terrible on anybody, but that would be the only chance.
So Cam Smith said, the last thing he said, I'm not happy with this win. I think we could have played so much better. We all wanted to play better. But in the end, I'm not going to mope over wins. That gets you nowhere in life. It's a good point.
Okay.
True. LV Live says, do you think Clay Helton will be here at the end of the season if he doesn't win the Pac-12 South?
Good question. I don't think he will. at this point, Utah's 0-2. Arizona has they got the tiebreaker on Arizona. Colorado, because they're undefeated, like they would have a leg up if, USC would be in a hole losing to Colorado. But I think the Pac-12 South is so bad, like that's such a low bar to set. And I don't think that would even make fans happy to win the Pac-12 South. So I didn't think going into the season, like you could win the South and he would not be retained. But at this point, I just think there's so much pressure that if he doesn't win the South, which is bad, I think that would mean a few bad losses in there, certainly to Notre Dame, even though it's not in the conference. I mean, who knows, maybe to UCLA or something like that. Yeah, that I think they would make a change. What do you think?
We'll let it play out before I fire everybody.
No, but if that happens, it would be hard for me to picture that staff, the whole staff being back.
Doug Holliday says, I heard this on the podcast. Great podcast, by the way. He says, at what point does Clay Helton lose the team and or coaches?
I feel like we kind of just talked about that a little bit. It seems like there are some things where there might be a little friction inside the program at least with the way they're playing for sure.
Yes.
And maybe that is translating to the coaching staff as well. There's always some players upset in every locker room because you got 100 players and only 22 of them are on.
Even if you're winning every game, there's going to be upset players.
Yeah, you go to Alabama, there's plenty of upset players because they're not getting playing time. So there's always upset players. When does it become? I mean, Max Brown talked about it. He said, USC has a lot more talent than a lot of teams, but you start to wonder, are there cancers in the locker room that are holding them back? So he didn't exactly say that, but that's basically what his message was. So you start to wonder, the team leaders, the captains on the team, those guys have to curtail the locker room to help make sure the locker room is going in the right direction as a group. So I think it's up to those captains and the veterans on the team to help push this team to where it can be because they're still really talented.
Yeah.
And I've said it several times. I don't know if I've said it on this show, but if you give you brought it up there, Clay Helton brought it up, the 17 to 21-year-old, 18 to 22-year-olds, you give them something to rally around, whether it be a Make-A-Wish kid or you're just upset because Mark Jones pulled out cupcakes if you're Washington or whatever it is. You give them something to rally around. It can be sentimental, it can be anger, it can be whatever it is. Because 18 to 22-year-olds is such a volatile time in your emotional development, you can become a different person.
Yeah.
You can go to a whole nother level, and then you give something to rally around in a negative sense, and it can do the same thing. You can completely tank a very good team if you have cancerous cells within the organization. So if they're not taking care of that, I think that's something that the older players on the team need to take care of in the locker room right now. And that was the thing that Clay Helton went up to Cam Smith and said these are two very important weeks for us. These 2 weeks are really important coming up because it's going to determine the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt. But people are saying if for some reason Clay Helton, it's a bad trajectory for the rest of the season, is it even smart to fire Helton at this point? Who could USC try and get?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to speculate on all that kind of stuff. I have one Periscope question. Would Pete Carroll come back to be athletic director? Or, some people want to talk about him being the coach. There's a lack of leadership at USC institutional-wise. There's no president. By definition, there's no leadership there. So a lot of the board of trustees have power. Lynn Swan's never done this before. It would be a crapshoot, no question about it. They could go out and make a ridiculously good hire, but the last time they hired a proven head coach was, I think we talk about Howard Jones in the 30s. Someone that had won a championship before. So. Yeah, no. Would you have confidence? Yes, you be careful what you wish for, because who knows who you're going to end up getting. So we're not going to speculate and all that kind of stuff. But yes, that would certainly still be a problem if you feel like firing Clay Helton is the right thing to do. There's still other issues that would come after that, like who you're going to hire.
Yeah, and how many great coaches are there? I mean, that's a conversation that comes up. It's Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, maybe Dabo. And maybe there's one or two other guys that are moving into that conversation, but there's some good coaches, but how many great coaches are there?
Right.
So who are you going to hire away? You're not hiring Kirby Smart. You're not hiring, Dabo Swinney away. Those things, you're not pulling those people away from ACC, SEC schools. You're not getting Jimbo Fisher to come out to USC. That's not happening. So how many there's very few championship coaches in the game right now. The people that have won championships are pretty much gone through
But at
program.
least get someone that's close. You get like a Jethro Franklin or someone that's been like won at a decent level, like not someone that's never done it before.
You get Pat Fitzgerald from Northwestern, and you get the same results. So what are you going to do then?
Yeah.
Because he's a good coach, but he's not a great coach. Because even at Northwestern, if you're a great coach, the Big Ten hasn't been great for 12 years in a row. There was a very down period. Did Northwestern win any title? No.
Yeah.
So he's a good coach, maybe a really good coach, but he's not great.
Right.
There's very few great coaches. So you have to find one that's up and coming. Maybe USC thought they had that with Clay Helton. And maybe they thought that was necessary with all the turmoil they'd had. How many are there going to be that many Lincoln Rileys or Kirby Smarts? You have to go find somebody, and then when USC hires an assistant from somewhere else, and they're going to be like, why are they hiring us? Why didn't they get... are you going to get that great coach? I don't think you are. So if you fire someone now, who are you going to get? That becomes the question.
I think USC can always get a great coach. They do not try to get a great
That
coach.
is-
That is the problem.
Ding, ding, winner.
You go after, this is what I always say, people are like, give me what about bring back Jeff Fisher? Like, no, that's terrible. Those are awful ideas. Never say those again. Do not say those.
They already said it in the comments, so
Yes,
feel
no,
shame.
no Jeff Fisher, no Jack Del Rio, nothing like that. No one that knows the fight song. The rule is you cannot hire anyone that has any ties to USC whatsoever. Then what you're going to do, you're only going to base it on his resume, not who he knows or when did he play at USC. No more of that crap. And as far as there's no coaching search now, but this is just for the future. You don't need a diamond in the rough. You're USC. It's a top 5 program at all time. You go to the Tiffany's on the corner and buy the biggest ass diamond you can find. That's what USC should get, not the little known in the nooks and crannies somewhere behind in the back room on sale. Don't do that anymore. Get the biggest diamond, gaudiest thing you can find, the biggest name out there. That's what USC should do. End of rant.
So you want Les Miles?
If he's someone you should talk to. You should talk to Bob Stoops. You should talk to Jethro Franklin. You should talk to all those people. Not avoid them like the plague. You talk to them. You should have talked to Chip Kelly. You should have given Chris Peterson whatever he wanted.
No. We should hire a search agency and then be like, yeah, thanks for... We don't really care.
No. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather, and this is a thing that I get so pissed when people are like, who would come to USC? It's freaking USC. Anyone would come here. Just about, there's a list of 2 or 3 people that would not, and that's about it.
And it's like recruiting. If a team is having a bad year, coaches go out to players to say, hey, with you, look what we can do with you if you come to the school. With coaches are going to look at the talent that USC has. They're going to want to come to USC and take the talent and have their system. They're going to want to, they have egos. Coaches have egos. They're going to want to use those players.
It's not
100% correct.
No, it's not as easy as you guys look at Texas.
An alpha person would go, I can go there and win.
How many people did Texas go through before they ended up with Tom Herman? Or with Charlie Strong before that. Texas is an elite destination for a team.
And they hired a horrible athletic director from it. They've done a lot of stupid things.
But they went through several coaches that they were at least rumored with potentially being coaches, and you're like, oh, that might be a good coach. And you're like, oh, well, that second, third, fourth, fifth.
And then, they also went after Nick Saban.
And they didn't get him.
Well,
but you just say, oh, no, they'll come here. They'll come here.
But you try. You have to try. USC has not tried.
This is in the context of people in the comments saying that no one's going to want to come to USC.
Okay, they're morons. Stop being in the comments where you say.
Let's get some more questions.
That is not.
We'll argue about this
true at all. Yes. Seriously, we're acting like there's a coaching search.
Yeah, we're saying this after game 5.
But on the way the trajectory's going, it's hard to. I didn't think this would happen, but it's hard to. It's odds on. I would say odds are that USC is going to have a new coach next year. The way it's going, honestly.
I don't know.
I hate to say it because Clay Helton's he's great. He's a great guy.
I just don't. Lynn Swan's the wild card. You don't know what he wants.
Yeah.
And this team.
But it's going to be board of trustees. It's going to be. There's a lot.
This team can still put it together.
I'm just seeing so little support right now. Unless he turns, he'd have to beat Notre Dame almost.
Yeah, Lynn Swan was down the sideline at the end of that game. He was not very happy about it, I don't think.
No.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it. What?
Sorry.
Our comments got flooded because they were like, yes, fight. So.
That's my bad. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It's really they said that too when Pat Hayden, they're like, well, what if you fire him? Then what? I'm just giving Keely time to.
Thank you. No, okay, I was waiting for you.
Okay.
How to turn a little angle a little bit because John Houston was out because Porter Gustin was out. We saw more guys get in. There's more rotation in general on the defense, but we saw Levi Jones get significant time. He played for the whole second half, and we saw a lot of Kanai Malga and Hunter Echols. What did you guys see from their play?
My favorite play was Hunter Echols hitting the J.J. Taylor, because J.J. Taylor's so small, he hit his legs, and J.J. Taylor went like he was like a fly on the wall, just splatted into his offensive lineman's back sideways.
Yeah.
So Levi Jones had a little bit of an impact there. He's a little bit different player than John Houston, so they used him more coming up and attacking a little bit more. I thought he tackled a little bit better than he has in the last couple of weeks, so I thought he played pretty well. I think Hunter Echols is still developing. I think he's burgeoning into a guy that they're using him more and more. I'll see once we actually break down the everything, the plays, and chart everything. But it seems like he's being used on rush packages more. They actually had a package this game where it was him, Jay Tufele, and then 2 actual outside linebackers. So he was actually playing inside for some third and long situations because they wanted him to try to get after the quarterback, and also because he's a little bit more athletic to try to chase down Khalil Tate if he gets out of the pocket. So I think he's a guy that's burgeoning a little bit and going to get some opportunities as the season continues as well.
I like that there was more athleticism on the field. I got a couple texts from like former NFL guys like, "Oh, I like Levi Jones." There's some positives about getting those guys in there. So I like that they're getting part of this rotation and getting more of a chance.
People seriously want Lane Kiffin back. To the point where they want me to ask you guys. No.
That's bad. No. I mean, he's struggling this year, but he's changed, but he's not good enough to coach at USC. He wasn't then, he's not now. He's better than he was but he wasn't good enough to be the head coach of USC. He wasn't good enough to be the head coach of the Raiders. Tennessee, he probably would have done fine if they gave him, if he just stuck around a little while. But yeah, it's a different thing. Tennessee, you have to have the chip on your shoulder guy because you're looking up at Alabama and Auburn and LSU and Georgia. At USC, you're looking down at everybody. So you don't need to hire Lane Kiffin at USC, even though they did.
I'm here for it, though. That'd be entertaining as could be.
The tweets alone would be good.
Lane Kiffin has the mind to be a great head coach. I don't think he has the ego to be a great head coach. His ego gets in his way sometimes.
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, he's still a young dude, so.
True.
We had a question.
Been around the coaching block.
But they shouldn't hire him now. Like if he gets a job at like Georgia or something and like turns him into then you could hire him. Not after a couple years of FAU.
They're trolling. We had a question about how would we grade JT Daniels' performance last night?
I mean, what was he, 16 and 24?
Yeah, I mean, it was fine. It wasn't.
He's got to get the deep balls out there a little bit farther. Now, the difference is,
it's really he's underthrowing some of the deep balls.
Keely and I talked about this.
We did.
On the Family Feud podcast, is that last week those were pass interferences.
True.
When a guy gets run into and he's running, he slows up to catch a ball, and the guy runs into him, it's pass interference. Last week they were. This week they weren't. That's the inconsistency of the Pac-12 with the Pac-12 refs. You also saw there should have been pass interferences when Michael Pittman's wrists are being grabbed as he tries to come out of breaks. And give credit to the Arizona cornerbacks. If you can get away with it, that is a terrific play. It's the same thing with grabbing a jersey. If you can get away with it, it's great. And people want to say, "Oh, there should have been." Well, you got away with it. So USC adjusted somewhat. I think JT was okay. He was fine. I don't think they didn't put much on him. That's it. The one quote I didn't understand at all. I don't know where it is. Clay Helton's like, "Well, we didn't want to put pressure on him. Being on a road game, we wanted to make sure we ran the ball a lot."
He kept saying a hostile environment too. And
No.
What happened 2 weeks earlier?
Was it really hostile? No.
When you went to Texas, why did you change it? Now you don't want to put pressure on him? You already threw him in the fire. You pulled him out of the fire. You're like, well, we don't want to put it back in the fire.
In front of the largest crowd in Texas history, we'll let him drop back 51 times. But, for Arizona, where it's a third empty or 2/3 empty, no, that's the hostile environment. You're worried about him there.
No, that's a terrible quote. I mean, the real answer is you can run on Arizona a lot better than you can run on Texas.
Right, yeah.
So that's why you did it. Don't give me the BS that, we wanted to make sure he was okay.
They should have protected him more I felt. I know Dan Weber likes to, hey, throw him out there doing stuff. I would have loved to see them protect him. I didn't want to see him drop back 51 times on the road like that. That didn't make much sense to me. But I thought he played fine.
A couple of nice throws. I mean, the throw to Josh Follow, the 37-yard gain, gets it over the linebacker. Just a little bit off. with the throws to Pittman, the underthrow. Now, he did a nice job moving in the pocket on the deep ball to Pittman. Pittman had like 2 or 3 yards on him, so if he gets it out there. Now, also, part of that is, and I was talking with Jordan Moore, USC's sideline reporter, and he brought up a good point, is that because he had to move in the pocket, he wasn't able to throw it quicker. So if you throw it earlier, you're able to get it out there farther before he gets an extra 10 yards down the field.
Yeah.
So even though he was beyond him, it's harder to get a 60-yard throw versus a 50-yard throw, whatever it may be that way. So that's partly the offensive line there. But then the Pittman throw on the outside, is just that much off, and that's been the case with him in Vons. It's like you feel like a lot of times it's just that much off, and maybe even Michael Pittman needs to pitter patter his steps a little bit better when he's near a goal line or something, because he's got super long legs, so he's got those long strides, and you saw that there. He actually, like, his last stride was like this long, and he ends up out of bounds. And it was similar in the one right before halftime against Washington State, where it's a very tough skill to learn. But maybe that's something he should work on, as the offseason or something. But it seems like those things are just a little bit off still. The screen pass to Velus Jones a little high when it looked like there was a couple blockers on him. They actually looked like they might block a screen for once.
Yeah.
Okay, but not great. I thought he was okay.
A little too much air, I think, under the deep balls. Like those, some you could put a little bit more zip on them, and I think it'd be okay. It seems like they're throwing him up there as opposed to like throwing it to where he's going to be, and that I think that's something that'll come, but that's something he needs to work on.
Matt has asked this question multiple times, so I'm going to try and get this one in. Sorry, Matt. He says, when did the culture at USC change from compete always to lax, no fire, and no urgency? It seems like it started to take hold in Pete's last year and then just continued. How do you change that?
I mean, I think with the sanctions really did it because you only had so many bodies. There was a legit concern, okay, well, if we get Leonard Williams hurt, you're really up against it because of the lack of depth. So you don't have that 4 or 5 star guy, extra 4 or 5 star guy that you can push in there. Last year they were able to push Brandon Peely into the starting lineup when Marlon Tuipulotu got hurt.
Yeah.
2 years ago when they had 15, 20 less scholarships overall, you're not getting that, or however many it was. You're not being able to push that extra guy up there. So I think that was part of it. So I think that started it, and you've basically seen that traverse the last few years, and the game has gone to being less practices and less hitting and stuff, and USC has not changed the culture from that time, so it's just kind of carried on, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, Pete Carroll's final years, I think he's got away from some of the more, he tried to create his own coaching tree. Like a lot of the people on his staff were people that were graduate assistants from him, instead of, when Nick Saban loses a defensive coordinator, he doesn't promote his linebacker coach, he goes out and gets the best one from somewhere else. And Pete Carroll wasn't doing that at the end. And, you had Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian there. I think Kiffin did some really good things as far as like recruiting and taking over, like managing the problem that was the scholarship limitations. I thought he did a pretty good job. But there was a certain mentality you needed for those couple of years, and you're still seeing that same mentality now. And because you hired Sark and Clay Helton was under all those guys, there's a lot of people are still the same, and you have that same mentality. So that's just one more reason to like break off and get somebody new to come in. They're not going to be thinking sanctions. They're not going to be thinking protect our bodies, and they're going to think like, hey, we got the best athletes here. We got a full complement of 85 scholarships. Let's go.
Chris said it'd be nice to see Clay get angry once in a while. All you got to do is come out on the sideline and watch when those flags start flying.
Yep.
Because he's awfully upset at the referees at times.
But they would like to see it too, like in a press conference or something. Just be like, be mad at something. Like we play. Like if he came out and said, that was garbage. We played like crap. I cannot believe, people would be like, wow,
So the argument is, well, the players wouldn't respect that because that's not who he is. But you see him on the sideline, he's going after people. So I don't know, you can say like, oh, he's never fiery. And the players even talk about, behind closed doors, he's more fiery with us. And, he'll in one-on-ones, he'll get into you and stuff like that. So I don't think that's necessarily the case. So I wouldn't mind seeing it as a public, stance, just going after it.
I think they'd respect, like Keely, what do you think? Like, I think the players would love that.
Yeah, no, I think that needs to happen. I think what you said a million times, something needs to change. Something needs to catch these players off guard so that they're like, whoa, it's not business as usual. We need to step up.
Yes.
Like, I think there's this routine lull. We know just the amount of effort we can put in to get through and to get through practice, get through a game, and that's it. And so I think something needs to change where they have to bring their A game every practice, every down, so that if you practice that way, it happens in games. But I feel like fans would actually like it if Helton was like, I don't think he should throw players under the bus, but I think that if he was like, this is unacceptable.
We were garbage,
we should have
blah,
never,
blah, blah. Yeah.
we should have never been this close to Arizona at the end of the game. That's on me. We need to get this going. And Helton's taking responsibility, but fire. I would like to see it.
A little bit of fire. Did we ever do anything with the USC #USC change thing? I got a lot of people to respond.
You told me that you guys were doing something with us, so no, I have not done anything.
All right. Well,
we still have plenty of submissions, though.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like, if we just go look at the hashtag, it's there, it's still there, so.
We're close to the end. Do we want to give grades? Final grades?
Grades? Like for?
Yes.
Like
quarterback, position groups, and coaching?
We could. I don't know. What do you think?
You don't sound too enthusiastic.
I'm not super excited about that, but like we could.
It was all right.
I feel like it's kind of a crapshoot.
Yeah, never mind. We'll not do it.
We don't. I mean, I'm down with. I could check on Periscope to see.
According to Pro Football Focus, JT Daniels graded out at 86.8 with a 90 overall passing, which is 90 is elite. USC has not had many 90s overall for defense. So he was really good.
Fun. Like I just always felt he's. I'm not gonna say that the team gets a pass because they have a true freshman quarterback, but I'm not gonna be super critical of the true freshman quarterback. And I thought he's been fine most of the time. I'm not gonna blame him for the fumbled snap. I mean, when he got sacked and fumbled, it's like whatever. But
do you think this team is good enough to beat Colorado? Is the question we got.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure they're good enough to beat. Will they beat Colorado? I don't know. This is an improved Colorado team. I feel like I'm always like propping up the teams USC plays. So I'm going to tell you what I know. I mean, Laviska Shenault is the name you need to know. We talked about this earlier. Like, he's a super stud wide receiver. And they got the kid, McMillan, I believe, is the transfer from Virginia Tech. Watch him run in this past weekend's game. Who did they play? UCLA. And just like bowled people over. UCLA actually came out of their bye week. Both teams had a bye week. Colorado kind of took a couple shots in the mouth early. UCLA looked pretty good as I've seen them look all year. But then they kind of like wore down a little bit they were playing on the road, in Boulder, and but Chenault's great. I think Steven Montez has been a lot better than what we saw him before, and I think it's McMillan is the running back that transferred from the grad transfer from Virginia Tech. Runs with power, so like they could do everything. It's going to be a way better looking offense than what you saw against Arizona, and I think they're improved on defense too. So they're undefeated, but all the teams they've played have been garbage. So you got to take that into account. But they're capable of beating USC. If USC doesn't play, if they play like they played against Arizona, I think Colorado would win.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
But USC is certainly
it also depends if it's the first half versus Arizona or the second half.